κατάλαβα. Good evening. I'm Yannis Kanellopoulos, Chairman of the Board of Directors of Orange Grove and CEO of Code for Thought, and I'm privileged enough today to moderate the discussion between Ambassadors Grubasic from the Kingdom of the Netherlands and Ambassador Payat from the United States. I'd like to welcome you both from the very beautiful and idyllic Achaia Klaus. I wish we were all here today together physically and have that discussion. But yeah, different tough times call for tough measures. So let's compensate and conduct this session digitally. I don't know if you hear me. Okay, perfect. So welcome. And yeah, Patras is sunny today. Achaia Klaus is really sunny. I hope that the earthquake didn't scare you that much. Here in Patras, we are kind of accustomed to earthquakes.
Can you hear us now?
Yes, there is a small delay, I think, but we can deal with it.
Great.
It was a bit shaky at some point during the afternoon, but otherwise, okay.
Okay, perfect. What about you, Ambassador Payat? Did you feel the earthquake?
Just a little bit, but obviously we've been paying close attention. I've been in touch with friends on Chios and watching what the government's doing. I will say I was very encouraged to see the emergency text message that we all received. That's an initiative, of course, that Minister Perakakis and the Ministry of Digital Policy put in place early in their tenure after the terrible fires in Mati. So it's really great to see that that system is working so automatically now.
So if I may say, that's the good example of technology saving people's lives and actually disrupting in a good way the way citizens are being warned.
Indeed. So how do you want, should we just dive right in? Should we just start?
Yes. Let's just start. We can start from, let's say, Ambassador Grubasic, shall I say, ladies first.
Perfect. Sounds right.
And let's start. I mean, the nice thing about the United States and the Netherlands is that both countries are promoting innovation, and they are like the pioneers when it comes to innovation and technology and disruption. So let's start with how, and they are well known on how they help the Greek technology and innovation ecosystem. So let's start with Ambassador Grubasic and tell us how exactly the Embassy of the Netherlands is helping out the local ecosystem.
Okay, thank you, Yannis. Of course, you're very familiar with Orange Grove since, as you said, you're on the board. But I'm very grateful for you allowing me this opportunity to address the conference, and specifically, of course, to focus on the issue of thinking globally. I would, for starters, though, repeat what you said earlier, namely, it's really a pity that we cannot do this in person, but hopefully this will change relatively soon, and we would have the pandemic over and be able to meet again in person. Well, since you asked me to talk about the programs that we implement here in Greece to develop the Greek ecosystem for entrepreneurship and innovation, I would like to focus on really on two issues. Firstly, of course, I would like to use this opportunity to talk a little bit about Orange Grove and what we as an embassy have been doing in this context to promote not only entrepreneurship, but also indeed very much innovation in Greece. And secondly, I would like to highlight more specifically an example of innovation that we see in Dutch universities, and that we are actually currently now working on to transfer to Greece, so that Greece can profit from this knowledge and experience that we are building up in the Netherlands on this. But first, maybe just to say a few things about Orange Grove, focusing also on how it has developed over years, because as you obviously know, we started out with what was a small pilot project a few years, well, several years ago. It was really just a flexible workspace on the ground floor of our embassy building, with the aim to bring to Greece the existing know-how in the Netherlands regarding entrepreneurship, to help entrepreneurs and preferably young entrepreneurs in Greece set up their innovative business here. Of course, this was at the time when Greece was really marked by a deep economic crisis. And what we had in mind was that we wanted to help people stay in Greece and reverse the brain drain in the country that was taking place at the time. I would like to add to that the underlying reason for doing so was that the Dutch government really strongly believes that the EU as a whole can thrive only if we have strong member states. And this is why we put a great effort not only in promoting innovation in our own country, so at home, but also very much abroad. The belief is really that if our partner countries are strong, the Netherlands and Dutch entrepreneurs will profit from this as well. So what we've seen over the years is that Orange Grove has really grown into a full-fledged incubator, with becoming an independent legal entity, but at the same time very closely connected to the embassy. And I'm actually very proud of it, because I see Orange Grove has become, if you will, a brand of the Dutch embassy in Athens. Well, you've already in your previous session discussed some of our incubation programs, so I will not elaborate on that. But I would like to say, since this is a session about thinking globally, what is, in our view, one of the main values of Orange Grove, and that is its network, and really its international network. We, of course, offer educational programs, and we help entrepreneurs learn the skills that they need to become successful entrepreneurs. But the main asset of Orange Grove, in our opinion, is this ever-growing group of voluntary mentors and coaches. And these are really people from all over the world who offer their time, but also their expertise and contacts to Orange Grove entrepreneurs for free, and thereby help them develop their business. So we're not only talking about experts from the Netherlands, but also, I mean, the ambassador of the United States is here. There's also people from the United States, as well as from Israel, Australia, and Colombia, in addition to other countries in Europe, of course. So what we see, and I think this is really one of the truly exciting elements of Orange Grove, is that people can be advised by somebody representing Philips or Netflix, or people who want to set up a business in agribusiness are supported by somebody in the Netherlands, for instance, Friesland Campina or other such big companies. So this really allows participants in Orange Grove to receive unique market insights and an international outlook from the very first steps, which we consider really important, because it is, of course, through people with such a wealth of experience in doing business who can teach starting entrepreneurs a lot about not only the importance of a business plan, but also positioning the product, but as well as marketing and innovation.
Yeah, nice. And
So,
I have to say also that the help of to bridge also the two answers. It's really nice that we see the nice collaboration with the Embassy of the United States and the Orange Grove, because we have several mentors in the United States that they have been introduced to us by the embassy. So by doing this bridge, I give the floor to you, Ambassador Payat, to let us know how the Embassy of the United States is helping Greece's startuppers.
Great. Well, thank you, Yanis, and thank you for having me on this panel with Ambassador Grubacek. I want to start by saying how jealous I am of Orange Grove. It's a fantastic asset, a huge contribution of the government of the Netherlands, and I'm very proud that we've been able to collaborate over the years on a variety of different programs, as you talked about. I'm also delighted to be back, virtually at least, in Patras. It's a city I visited a lot. Especially since I'm with the Dutch ambassador, of course. Patras is also famous for its cycling team, right, and for the race of sacrifice to Kalabrita, which yes, I was very sorry to miss this year because of the pandemic, but I look forward to getting back again before too long. It's been really exciting for me to get to know Patras a little bit over these years, to see what you're doing at Orange Grove, to see what's happening at the university, at the technology park. It's really one of the hidden gems, I think, of the Greek technology space. And I was really, really proud earlier this year when Think Silicon was acquired by one of the technology giants from my home state, Applied Materials in California. And it was a real validation of what I had seen in so many other examples of innovative, competitive, and creative startups that were thriving despite all the challenges there in Patras. So I'm really glad that we're able to have this conversation today. What I would emphasize is first that this is a sector that the United States is going to continue to be engaged in. Of course, Yanis, as you know, we put a big emphasis on technology in 2018 at the Thessaloniki International Fair, yes, bringing all of our technology giants, IBM, Microsoft, Google, Facebook. But what was really exciting to me about that first year at the TIFF was what we saw at the Digital Innovation Pavilion hosted by the Ministry of Digital Policy. And all of the entrepreneurial energy that was reflected there from across Greece, from Heraklion, from Patras, from Athens, from Thessaloniki. And it really validated for me the proposition that Greece could be much more competitive in this space. We've seen that proposition really demonstrated over recent months. This huge new investment from Microsoft, of course, their largest investment ever in Greece in a new data center, hundreds of millions of dollars. Acquisitions by Microsoft, new investments by Pfizer, by Deloitte, by Cisco, all of whom are coming to Greece because they see the combination of strong human capital and a very competitive value proposition in terms of the price and retention of good talent. We highlighted a lot of these issues when my boss, Secretary of State Pompeo, was in Thessaloniki last month, and we're going to do so again next week on Monday. Secretary Pompeo's senior scientific advisor will be here in Athens. We look forward to seeing Minister Perakakis, Minister Georgiadis, and then he has a team which will be traveling down to Heraklion to again look at what's happening at Fourth and some of the other innovative centers that are there. So this is an area the United States is committed to continuing to support. We've used our public diplomacy programs to good effect, I think, to help empower Greek entrepreneurs, to build bridges between the Greek startup sector and the American creative industries with programs like South by Southwest. I'm incredibly proud of what we've done with Code Girls, which is targeted at young women who are interested in science, technology, mathematics. And I've been really inspired to see some of the Code Girls kids in everywhere from Yanina to Alexandropoli. The first one of these that I did in central Greece, you see over and over again that there is a fantastic appetite and ambition among Greek young people. Last thing I would note here, and then look forward to the conversations. I think as Greece moves forward, one of the things the technology space will benefit from is a government in the Prime Minister and Minister Perakakis, Minister Georgiadis, Minister Dimas, who I know spoke to you earlier, all of whom have a strong focus on empowering and enabling this sector. A few years ago, when I started working on the Thessaloniki Fair and talking to American tech companies about Thessaloniki, they would ask, where is that? And nobody really thought of Greece as having a significant role in the knowledge-based economy of the world. That's not the case anymore. And in fact, what US tech companies are now asking is, what else are we missing in Greece? We missed Think Silicon. What are the other examples of competitive companies that are ripe for additional capital and market access that comes from working with the big American technology giants? So thank you for putting this together. I'm very jealous that I'm sitting here in my living room and not at the Archaea Klaus winery, which is a beautiful corner of Western Greece that I look forward to getting back to. And especially as we look towards 2021 and the Greek bicentennial, since Western Greece played such an important role in the story of Greek independence, I can promise you that I will be back to Patras and that the embassy will pay a lot of attention to your part of the country. So thanks.
You're welcome, and thanks for the nice comments. And I like in particular the last one, that people do ask what is for us in Greece right now. I mean that Greece is becoming a destination of capital and interest from the United States. Now a question to both of you, because United States and Netherlands are very well known for their innovation and entrepreneurial ecosystems. And in the startup terminology, we have the term secret sauce, which means let's say the unique advantage or the unique selling point of the startup, so they can survive the market and they can find clients and they can differentiate from the competition. So what is the secret sauce of the ecosystem of the Netherlands, and what is the secret sauce of the ecosystem of the United States, and they are so successful? Ambassador Grubasic?
Well, thank you. The secret sauce, as you call it, is for the Netherlands. I would really, what comes to my mind are really two words, and it's triple helix. It really means that in the Netherlands, in order to get where we are, and indeed the Netherlands is one of the countries that is known for its high standards and high achievements in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation. The secret there is really the fact that since several years now, the government realized that they really had to bring together not only different initiatives, but also very much the different stakeholders in the area of entrepreneurship and innovation. And so what you've seen over time is the creation in the Netherlands of what we call like sectors of innovation, and sectors where not only the private sector, but also very much the public sector, and not least the academic world is being brought together. And it's in this, really in this combination of working together for thematic sectors where we have managed to get where we are when it comes to the area of innovation. And so to just give you one example, it means that startups now in the Netherlands are the #1 job growth engine. Okay. And we have come to realize over time even more how important is the role of Dutch universities and how important they are in fueling that economic growth, exactly by focusing on innovation. And this is actually something, maybe we can talk about it, what we would also like to bring to Greece, the importance of universities when it comes to innovation.
Yeah, it goes without saying. I mean, I fully share that opinion that if we want to see the innovation ecosystem growth, we need the help of the brilliant scientists. So all we have to do is to kind of take them out of their laboratory and help them to create a spin-off and become more entrepreneurial. This is something that we're also working at Orange Grove. Ambassador Payat, United States secret sauce of their system or ecosystem of innovation.
Thanks, Yanis. I think if I knew the right answer to that question, I would be a venture capitalist and not an ambassador, and I'd probably be a lot more wealthy. But let me give it a try. First of all, I grew up in La Jolla, California, just a couple of kilometers from the Salk Institute, where the polio vaccine was discovered, and the University of California, San Diego. It's a community that likes to boast that it has more Nobel laureates living in that postal zone than any place else in the world. And it goes to what my Dutch colleague talked about, which is the importance of having the academic institutions, the commitment to science and mathematics that gives you the human capital. I know Greece has that piece of the secret sauce. Another element is an enabling environment in terms of government policies and regulations. And I remember very early in my time here in Greece, 4 years ago, I asked the team to set up a roundtable discussion with some young entrepreneurs. And I can't remember if anybody from Orange Grove was there, but what will always stick with me was at one point, I asked this group of maybe 10 or 12 young entrepreneurs and innovators what they needed from the government. And they all said the same thing. They said, just have the government stay out of our way. There are too many obstacles that government policy places. I think that Greece has made great progress on that policy environment, the reform elements in recent years. And I think that's one of the reasons that you're seeing this new investment from the United States. And then the third aspect that I would highlight, and this is cultural, is the willingness to fail and fail fast.
Right.
The United States, one of our great advantages, and there's a theory called the frontier theory that talks about how the opening of the American West in my home state of California was shaped by people who were reinventing themselves and who were willing to risk everything to build a different future. That culture has been key to the success of Silicon Valley. The belief that if you're not experimenting and pushing the envelope, and therefore failing from time to time, you're not moving towards creativity enough. I remember there's a good documentary called General Magic, which is about the group of computer engineers that preceded Apple and who basically invented the iPhone outside of the Apple ecosystem. The company failed, but they were the first ones to come up with the GUI, the graphical user interface.
Right.
And the idea of a single device that you could hold in your hand that would both connect you to global databases, and nobody was calling it the internet at that point, but also serve as your phone and a memory device. So, and again, what's interesting about the film, the documentary, is the company was a complete failure, but a lot of the original founders went on to become part of Apple. They became part of the iPhone ecosystem, and they literally changed the way the world communicates. So I think that's a great example of how in the United States, we've created a business culture which recognizes the value of failure as part of the innovative life cycle. And that's something where I think Greece is just starting to develop that, but it's clearly there and has all the ingredients. So it's not so much a secret sauce, it's a matter of taking the different ingredients that are already on the shelf and adding them together in the right way so that it becomes a beautiful result.
So it's a recipe, not a secret sauce. with the right ingredients. Perfect. Okay. There is a debate. In both answers, I see that we're talking about synergies. We're talking about the role of government or the state. And there is a global debate, who drives innovation these days? Is it private money like VCs and individuals like entrepreneurs that are driving innovation? Or is it the state and the government that they are setting the big picture? For instance, when NASA started funding the first missions to the moon, lots of technologies were developed and we are using them nowadays, like the mobile phones, for instance. So what's your opinion on this? I mean, is it, let's say, the state that drives innovation, or is it the individuals? Ambassador Grubasic?
Well, I heard my American colleague say that one of the comments that you get from people asking, when you ask them what works best, is if the government stays out of the way. And I do believe that is true when it comes to avoiding red tape and bureaucracy
Yes.
and too many licenses to be able to move ahead. But of course, there is another side to this, and that is the role of the government or the state when it comes to investing in innovation. And I'm inclined to say that from that point of view, the role of the government, at least what we see in the Netherlands, has been and continues to be crucial. To give you just a few figures, the total investment in the ongoing year, 2020, even though of course it's a very strange year, total investment in innovation is 4.9 billion euros, and half of that is actually public money. And I do believe that without the government putting that money into several initiatives, again, using this structure of the top sectors that we have and that focus on crucial areas for innovation, without that role, I think it would be quite hard to be as successful as we are in the area of innovation. You need this sort of driver to get the private initiatives going, and to include obviously the universities and the science who can underpin these efforts. And there too, I hear a strange buzz now. I hope it's not my computer. Can you still hear me?
Yes, perfectly. Yes.
Yeah? So there too, this is indeed also an element of culture, a little bit different from what Ambassador Pyatt was saying, but of course it's something that marks us and it is in our genes. And I think this is something that can still be stimulated here too, is just simply working together to get stronger.
Right.
Being convinced that if you join forces, you do create the synergy that is needed. But again, I do strongly also believe that with the government backing all of this up with public money, that is a crucial element as well.
Okay, nice point. Ambassador Pyatt?
Thanks, Yanis. So I think my answer is not that different from Ambassador Grubacek's. Obviously the United States social model is a little more capitalistic than what we find in Europe. But you also make the point, you look at the leaps forward that have happened in technology, for instance, as a result of the Apollo moon mission, as a result of investments made by DARPA, our Defense Advanced Projects Research Agency. Another example, of course, is the huge effort that the US government, like many European governments, is putting into finding a vaccine for the coronavirus and solving this enormous global crisis. I think there's a really exciting similarity to what Minister Perakakis and the Greek government is doing with your new 5G licenses. Mm-hmm. And of course, that license competition has just begun. But I think it's a fantastic and innovative idea that Minister Perakakis has developed to use some of the revenue from that 5G auction as seed capital for an innovation investment fund. And it's a good example of getting the right balance. You don't want to have, in the American view, you don't want to have government choosing winners and losers. That needs to be the task of the market. And you don't want to have so much government regulation that you strangle good ideas and you get people caught up in bureaucracy. But government can play a role in identifying big, ambitious ideas and then putting resources behind those ideas in a way that catalyzes transformative technology. But I will say also, in addition to my time here in Europe, I've spent a lot of my career in India, 7 years total in a bunch of different jobs. And I went to India first during its period of economic crisis. But I was also in India when the whole story of Bangalore and Hyderabad and the India tech sector was really taking off. And it always made a big impression on me when I would talk to CEOs and the heads of businesses in Hyderabad or Bangalore. They would all make the point that they never would have been able to do what they were doing in those cities in New Delhi, in the capital, because in the capital, there were just too many bureaucrats who would have gotten in the way. And I think there's some of the same in the United States. Silicon Valley is about as far away from Washington, D.C. as it's possible to be while still being in the continental United States. But we also have a thriving technology corridor around the Dulles International Airport, just outside of Washington, D.C., with a lot of companies whose initial customers came from the federal government. So I think it's a matter of finding the right balance. And the most important thing that government can do is one of the things that the Mitsotakis government has tried to put in place, creating a structure that allows companies to hire and fire, a structure that allows companies to experiment, to respond quickly to the marketplace, and as I said earlier, to fail fast if that's going to be necessary. The worst thing of all for a venture capitalist is a zombie enterprise, a company which is never going to come back to life, but which continues to take resources. And you have to figure out how do you build a regulatory framework that allows that to take place.
Okay. Yeah. So then, if I hear you both correctly, it is the combination. So there is no definite answer, individuals or the state. It's we need both, but most essentially, bureaucracy needs to stay out of the way and the red tape. That's definitive for to facilitate innovation. The other question I'd like to ask you is about technology and prosperity. So I was reading this book from Tim O'Reilly, which is called What's the Future? And it talks about that the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. And we see that lots of imbalances created in several societies, and we see technologically advanced societies that the gap between society's classes is really big. The point is how we can bridge this gap, how innovation and technology can help. One example that I have in mind is the Code.org initiative in the United States that tries to teach people how to code so it is easier for them to find jobs. And one of the things that we as Orange Grove are working is the digital skills reskilling and upskilling. So do you have any, I'd like to hear your comment on this. I mean, how technology can become the driving force towards unemployment and facilitate and actually lead to more prosperity to our societies.
You're looking at me first?
Yes, yeah, indeed, sorry. Yes, Ambassador Grubasic.
Okay, well, of course, this is a huge question, and there too, I would sort of quote Ambassador Pyatt back from what he said in the beginning. If we knew the answer to that, we would be, I think, finding our way out of some of the world's biggest problems. But I do think what you pointed out very rightfully so is that one of the big challenges, I would say, for, well, for governments around the world is that we do not know what the jobs of the future are.
Yes.
We sort of, as I see it, stand at the beginning of probably what is going to be the robotics area, but we don't exactly know. And I would say that this is absolutely one of the greatest challenges also for our education. I see that not only high schools are struggling with it, but their universities, of course, very much too. We do not know exactly for what kind of work line we have to educate the younger generation. But what we do know for sure, I think, on the basis of the facts that we have, again, when you look at how important innovation is for job creation and opportunities, is that we need to prepare the younger generation, that we need to prepare our children for a future where entrepreneurship is a key skill that you should master.
Right.
And if I may on that say that, because this is really one of the exciting things that we are going to do in Orange Grove in the next, in the next couple of months, is that we want to bring to Greece a new program of master classes. This one would be titled the Entrepreneurial University, with exactly the aim of introducing, again, using experience and best practices from the Netherlands, more particularly from both universities in Amsterdam, the Free University and the University of Amsterdam, together with the City of Amsterdam, using the program that they have set up, namely the Amsterdam Center for Entrepreneurship, and trying to transfer as much as possible the knowledge and the know-how that they have collected and bring it to Greece, right, and seek the partnership with Greek universities to explore how indeed universities can create a mindset of entrepreneurship and how they can develop and activate educational programs where they connect basically academic knowledge to the outside world. I think that this is a really important step to looking at how, do we look at innovation and entrepreneurship in the future, and what does it mean for job creation, even though I think it is extremely hard to establish a direct connection between the two.
So probably what we need to learn is how to learn and relearn. That's
how
maybe...
to learn and how to apply your
yes,
knowledge in daily life, in practice, how
yes,
to make sure. And there again, I'm coming back to the top sectors where you combine the business sector with the universities to make sure that there is applied knowledge essentially.
Yes. Ambassador Payet?
Yeah, thanks, Yanis. I'll be quick on this one, but I think I have a very different perspective from your question, because I think on balance, I'm a technology optimist. And if you look at how technology and connectivity, computing power, how it is changing the way the global economy works and how people create value, I find it incredibly exciting, especially when you bear in mind that we're really still in the early days of this transformation, the transformation that Stella talked about, as tools like artificial intelligence, big data, biotechnology all come together. What I have seen over the course of my diplomatic career is, in the developing world, especially in places like India, China, Africa, you have literally hundreds of millions of people who have been lifted out of poverty, largely because of this technology transformation. The ability of people suddenly to think more ambitiously about the world around them. In India in particular, there's an anecdote that I saw once in a newspaper article. And I was in India when all of a sudden cell phones went from being a luxury to being something that every poor farmer was able to afford. And I remember an article that was written about an isolated rural village where one young man was so excited he had discovered the internet, and he was spending all of his time with Google, and he was just looking up different things, and he was going around his village and just sharing with people all of this information, some of which was probably trash, but all of the information that he was learning through Google. And his uncle, who was of an older generation, looked at him and said, "Can Google milk the cow? And if it can't milk the cow, I'm not interested in it." And I think that captured perfectly this generational collision that's going on. But in a place like India, where hundreds of millions of people, the majority of the population, lived in terrible poverty in villages, and if your father was a goat herder, then there was a high probability that you would be a goat herder, that your grandfather would have been a goat herder, and that your children would be goat herders, and that your entire life would be lived within 20 or 30 kilometers of that village. Suddenly, these people are emerging into a new middle class. They have the opportunity to educate themselves, what the Dutch ambassador was talking about earlier, to travel to big cities like Delhi or Mumbai, to imagine that they might better themselves. And it's a simple fact of probability that among those hundreds of millions of people lifted out of poverty are going to be some really smart and creative folks who might discover a cure for cancer or a new way to generate electricity. So I think on balance, these technology tools are a good thing and will actually help to reduce inequality. The challenge that we face is that we in Europe and in North America have enjoyed an enormously privileged standard of living. And now all of a sudden, these developing countries are looking to achieve the same. And that's disrupting our labor markets. It's disrupting the environment. It's creating challenges in terms to government policymakers to, again, get the balance right. And I think that's going to be a much bigger issue, combined with the enormous issue that I know many Greeks are sensitive to, as are Americans, the issue of privacy.
Right.
And in particular, the alternative social and economic model that's represented by countries like China, who are also making great leaps in technology, but are using those technology leaps in part to reinforce their anti-democratic systems of governance. So there are a lot of big ideas there, but I think what I would come back to is just the basic ideas that we should not be afraid of technology.
No.
And we should be confident that whether it's the next generation of telephones, 5G, or smarter artificial intelligence, with good government policies, we can use these tools to reduce poverty and create opportunities that previous generations could only have imagined.
That's a great message, and I fully support it. So final comment from both of you. You are diplomats. You've met lots of people, lots of cultures worldwide. So what would be your kind of personal hint towards the Greek people or the Greek entrepreneurs? I mean, how do you, so based on what you've experienced all those years, either in India or other countries, what would be your advice to a Greek entrepreneur? Ambassador Grubasic?
My advice, I'm hesitating between two advices. My first advice would be not to reinvent the wheel and to make use of all the knowledge and the best practices that are out there and that are out there available to be reaped. I mean, for instance, in Orange Grove, I mean, we're very much here for that, precisely that, I would say, to share the knowledge that we have with our Greek friends and entrepreneurs. The other piece of advice at the same time would be, and I mentioned it earlier, to always keep in mind that it's really by working together and by sharing with others that you get further, that you achieve more progress, and that it will bring you further.
Right.
You know, we come from this country that had to struggle the land from the sea. It made us famous for the polder landscapes, and poldering in itself became a word showing that, you know, you need often to sit with all the different stakeholders to be sure that you know what are the various interests, what are the different challenges faced by different people with whom you work. And it has really, I think, taught us better than by working together. And I think these two are crucial, but I must add to that, and you alluded to that already yourself, the Greek government has, I think, made tremendous steps forward in bringing to the fore the importance of entrepreneurship and sort of taking the lead in bringing the private sector to a higher level, also by enabling the environment into a more business-friendly environment. And last but not least, I would like to say, because we haven't talked about it at all, but it is an important element for all countries that are part of the EU. Of course, the EU, with all the funds that are available, is very much supporting different kinds of innovation as well. And so there too, working together is key.
Right.
And sharing knowledge is the other crucial element.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ambassador Payat?
Yeah, thanks. So I guess I would say this, and in some ways I am, you know, I'm reluctant to provide this idea to Greeks who have thousands of years of being outwardly oriented and traveling around the world with a diaspora that's so successful in the United States. But I think for all young people, the advice I always provide is get out and see the world, because our global economy is so much more connected than it was when I was joining the workforce many decades ago. And the future of our global economy is going to be so highly dependent on the international community working together to tackle these shared global challenges. And COVID is the most dramatic example of that, but there are lots of others that we can think of. I think I have seen over the course of my career how putting myself in the shoes of somebody else who comes from a different culture, a different language, a different background is so incredibly powerful to think through my own options and to understand where the global economy is going. As I said a little bit earlier, I think we're in a very exciting time in terms of technological innovation and transformation, but I also recognize that we're just in the very early days. If this was a football match, we would be 5 minutes in. And so from that perspective, I think taking the opportunity early on to travel the world, to work overseas if you have the opportunity, to study overseas, to study in the United States if you're coming from Europe, is just fantastically empowering. And I say that in part as the parent of two successful young people who did much of their education abroad. And I see how enriching it was for them to have spent time following me around to places like India and Hong Kong and Austria and all the other places that they lived growing up. So again, thanks for the conversation. And speaking for myself, I hope very much that we can continue this tradition of collaboration between the American Embassy and the Dutch Embassy. I'm very excited to get back to Patras before too long as well.
Oh, that would be great. Thank you both. I did enjoy the discussion. I hope you did too, and I hope our audience also. Your views, your viewpoints, and your hints were very valuable, I think, for young entrepreneurs. I'd like to thank you both, and I hope I'll see you in flesh sooner rather than later.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Bye.
It was great to be here. Thank you.
You're welcome. Bye.